Hellboy gets another chance at a movie franchise revival, but I think TV may be more likely in its future. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. The IMDb synopsis for Hellboy, The Crooked Man reads, Hellboy and a rooked BPRD agent. Boy, do they even mention the BPRD? I guess if you know the lore, you would know that. Hellboy and a rookie BPRD agent in the 1950s are sent to the Appalachians, where they discover a remote community dominated by witches and led by the sinister local demon, the Crooked Man. All right, I really enjoyed the first two Hellboy movies directed by Guillermo del Toro and starring Ron Perlman. And I was won over by the halfway point of the David Harbour reboot attempt, which I guess didn't do well. I enjoyed it for a number of things. Didn't love it, but I definitely enjoyed it from the back half on. But I think it was a box office failure. And so this looked like, okay, taking another crack at it, new actor playing Hellboy, and the trailer looked like it would lean into horror even more, which interested me. It looked like it was going to be more ground level kind of horror, but I was up for that. You know, they did Lovecraftian kind of horror in the first two Hellboy movies, and then they leaned into some other stuff, some other inspirations in the David Harbour movie. And so I was ready for just kind of, okay, let's have different types of horror. There's so many different traditions of horror, folklore, superstition, and stuff. And so it interested me what I saw in the trailer, and I was even accepting of the fact that, okay, it's probably going to be a lower budget, but you can still do some really cool things in horror. I think the genre of horror lends itself to lower budgets. But the story here felt like a TV series episode instead of a fresh new take for a movie franchise. The background and origin of Hellboy is not portrayed, which is fine. There's just little snippets mentioned, but it did seem very expected that the audience know this character already. They do explore some new territory regarding Hellboy's mother that hasn't been explored in the movies before, and that was welcome fresh ground for me to potentially cover, but Hellboy remains a bit too stoic and unmoved by it, as far as I'm concerned, to really make me feel what I wanted to. It does take place in '59. That was a surprise. I didn't know that going in. I thought, okay, this flashback that's starting the movie is going for a long time. And then I was like, oh, crap. Okay, no, I think this is... I think I understand now. And so, you know, could it be treated as a prequel to either of the existing franchises as it were? Maybe, but you have to kind of cock your head and close one of your eyes because he seems to be a more public figure in this version than he was certainly in the Del Toro movies, where there was a big reveal of him to the public. And before that, he was just appearing in tabloids and stuff. But here, he apparently was on the cover of Time magazine or something like that. So they're on their way in a train to deliver a creature to a research lab. And things go crazy, and they're stuck in the Appalachian Mountains, where they soon meet Tom Farrell and his supporting cast. This is where it really started feeling like a mid-season episode of an existing TV show. In numerous scenes, I don't want to say the majority, but like way more than I would be used to in these movies or other, you know, similar superhero type movie. In numerous scenes, Hellboy and his partner Joe are virtually standing silent in the background as time is given to introduce and develop Tom and other characters that are just like people living in the Appalachians. And by the end of the movie, Hellboy and Joe are just moving on, and Tom and the other characters are left behind, and it's Joe and Hellboy presumably off to tomorrow's adventure, you know? And so it makes Tom and his supporting cast very incidental. And I want, when we're talking about a movie and not a TV episode, I want investment in the main characters. The opposition here and the stakes feel very ground level compared to the large-scale, otherworldly, massive stakes of the other movies. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Here, the ghost demon character called the Crooked Man and a witch are the main villains. And the conflict is definitely not, you know, being presented through giving us spectacular visuals. This would be fine if they leaned into horror enough, but I don't think they do. The dialogue, the performances both make characters too quickly accustomed and adjusted to the horrific, when I think they should be in a frenzied panic and traumatized between scary encounters. They kind of give this sort of lip service to being scared and running and having high eyebrows, because they're running and they're, afraid, I guess. But it's not near enough to make me feel for them like, oh my gosh, this is a traumatizing, horrific experience they're having. There are a few, I don't think this is, I'm going to say half-hearted. I don't mean that in terms of like the actors weren't in it. It felt like just tonally, the jokes were only half committed to, almost like they maybe felt like obligations to include some humor rather than them really helping to define the flavor in a positive way. It just wasn't long before I was totally bored, and that feeling remained all the way through the climax and resolution. Man, as far as the cast goes, all new performers to me, including Jack Casey, Kesy, I guess. I don't know how you pronounce that, but he plays Hellboy. And he seemed to pull some nice things from both Ron Perlman's and David Harbour's versions, while still doing his own thing and still feeling like Hellboy. So under different circumstances, I would be very accepting of Jack Casey as like a franchise, the new franchise Hellboy. It was just the execution, the script that was just not working for me here. And the other actors gave performances in styles that felt overly simplistic. The way I would describe it is as though the character bios that they were given were virtually blank pages. And so they were kind of one-note characters. To me, they felt like maybe like one-shot TV guest performers that are like, this character is only going to appear in this episode in the entire run of this 5-season TV show. And so they come and they're more of like a plot device than they are these meaty roles that they can kind of settle into and give us some layers and nuance for. There just didn't seem to be any of that I was picking up on. Okay, as far as the stunts, the visual presentation, from the very first shot, the CG was noticeably unconvincing to me. Now, that's not necessarily saying a lot. I have eyes that are cursed to pick out CG, but still it was disappointing that like the oncoming train in the very first shot, as it was getting closer, I was like, I think that's CG. Oh yeah, that's definitely CG. And then that just continued and got more glaring to me when in the one scene with a raccoon and other scenes with like living creatures, it just really looked like TV quality CG. Sufficient for a weekly show, sufficient for some premium streaming shows, but not polished enough for what I expect and want in a movie. In fact, the overall visual presentation felt very TV quality with lighting and makeup designs that felt serviceable but basic. The Crooked Man himself had, comparatively to other creature and makeup designs, had a rubbery looking face that at least I think could have benefited from coating it with some KY jelly or Vaseline or something to make it look more wet, more organic, something like that. The camera frequently used this sort of narrow focus effect that blurred out the details for everything but what's near the center of the frame. And they kept using that, and I'm not sure exactly why. It didn't help me feel creeped out. It just felt like a device that I didn't understand really the reason for. Maybe that's just something I missed because of my disinterest. Nighttime scenes were also way more visible than was helpful to me. For horror, especially if you're on a limited budget, darkness helps engage my fear of the unknown, as I imagine things looking creepier than they are when they're put on full display, as they pretty much always were in this movie. So the visual presentation really was not working for me. As far as themes, anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance and the themes of this thing that could trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation, well, as I said earlier, going to Appalachia, it's a really cool idea. We're tapping into a different tradition and lore of the supernatural with a focus on American folklore and superstition. But as usual, when elements of Christianity are brought in, as I think they appropriately are, given kind of like the setting of the Appalachian Mountains, when elements of Christianity are brought in as a counter to supernatural evil, they are treated like these impersonal widgets and tools and rituals and stuff that have these arbitrary and really very unbiblical rules for functionality. Sadly, I think there's a good amount of teaching, and there are sectors of Christianity that are unbiblical and that are more ritualistic, that are more superstitious, So I'm not saying that this doesn't exist. it's just kind of like uninteresting to see that yet again, this is how concepts of Christianity are employed in a kind of supernatural horror movie. And to cap it all off, the moral of the story is that the hero, and I mean Tom, not Hellboy, unfortunately, the hero, Tom, like Dumbo, has the power he was seeking within himself all along. I mean, whew. So you can guess, I have no idea, of course, what your tastes are in movies, but you can guess that if I had a time machine, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, you've got to skip this one. The only thing you're going to appreciate about this movie is the reminder that it's past time to upgrade your collection of the first two movies to Blu-ray and finally buy that David Harbour film. They're all really cheap. They're like $8 or $9 right now, so like for $24 you can get the whole trilogy on Blu-ray. Man, I might pull the trigger on that this weekend. We'll see. But those are all of my thoughts for now. Oh, wait, no. Let me give you the rating information. It's rated R for some violent content, language, and nudity. The nudity is almost completely shadowed. So if that's helpful to you, although I wouldn't count what I've said up to this point a recommendation for watching the movie anyway. But yeah, those are all of my thoughts on The Crooked Man. As always, I'd love to get... Oh, no, wait. What is it? Hellboy. Man, I'm really screwing up this closing. Those are all of my thoughts for now on Hellboy, The Crooked Man. As always, I would like to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected. I do want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. You can get info about the benefits of joining over at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. And then I hope you'll check out our podcast and stay connected to all CGC content over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.